He believed his authority granted him the right to humble her, to silence her on a deserted highway with the cold steel of handcuffs and a sneer. Yet when she entered the courtroom draped in a navy uniform and a composure that commanded the silence of the room, he came to a chilling realization. He hadn't detained a suspect, he had ignited a firestorm. My dear audience, what you are about to see is more than a tale. It is a profound testament to the quiet strength of conviction and the relentless pursuit of justice where it is most often overlooked. If this is your initial visit to our channel, I would love for you to introduce yourselves in the comments section below by letting us know where you're from. And if these stories stir something within you, challenging your perspectives or inspiring your thoughts, please consider subscribing and activating the bell icon. We are dedicated to amplifying voices that deserve to be heard every single day. Thank you for joining us. Now let's dive into the narrative. The expanse of Magnolia Highway, a quiet artery just beyond Savannah, Georgia, was a place where sound seemed to dissipate. Nearing midnight, the flow of cars was scarce and the dense, moist air settled over the asphalt like an unspoken premonition. The moon's light cut through the moss-covered branches of ancient oaks, casting dancing shadows across the faded road markings. It was a serene landscape, though deceptively so. Commander Alana Brooks had always found peace in her late-night drives. The isolation offered a rare clarity. Following a visit with her aging father on the coast, she was returning to her base in Charleston. She was dressed casually in a soft, dark sweater, black jeans and sneakers, her thick, braided hair secured in a simple bun. She was, to all outward appearances, just another woman on her journey home. The sight of flashing red and blue lights behind her didn't immediately trigger alarm. Instead, a cold, clinical awareness snaked up her spine, not from any wrongdoing on her part, but from a lifetime of witnessing how quickly authority can be corrupted in the wrong hands. She slowed her car, activated her signal, and glided onto the gravel shoulder, her hazard lights blinking a steady rhythm into the profound dark. The patrol car behind her lingered for a moment before the driver's door opened. A towering figure emerged, his silhouette stark against the cruiser's lights. Officer Jason Trent. The name held no familiarity for Alana, but his gait was instantly recognizable. Deliberate and heavy-footed, a man who relished the weight of his own power. He approached her car with a swagger more suited to a high school sports field than a lonely road at night. Alana lowered her window halfway, her hands remaining on the steering wheel. "Good evening, officer," she said, her voice even and respectful. "Is there an issue?" Trent didn't respond immediately. He shone his flashlight directly into her eyes, as if her face was an offensive glare. Without requesting her license or registration, he simply said, "Out late, aren't you?" Alana blinked. "Just heading home, sir. Any warrants I should know about?" She slightly cocked her head. "No, sir." "Might I ask why I was stopped?" His mouth twisted into a gesture that was half smirk, half threat. "Taillights are out." She nearly smiled. "That's odd. My vehicle was just serviced last week." "Well," he tapped the side of her door, "I guess they missed something. Step out of the car." Her grip tightened on the wheel. "With all due respect, officer, I need to know the reason. Am I being detained?" Trent leaned closer. "Now you sound like one of those internet attorneys. Step out." Alana drew a deep breath. She was intimately familiar with the protocols and the dangers of defiance. She had drilled recruits on how to survive hostile stops. But in this moment, remaining still felt like a concession, and concession was alien to her nature. Slowly, she unbuckled her seatbelt, opened her door and stepped out. The humid Georgia air was a second, silent warning. "Turn around," Trent commanded. "Hands on the vehicle, officer?" she began to ask, but he was already closing the distance. "Now." She obeyed, her palms flat against the warm metal of her car. She felt him approach, then the sharp, painful snap of cuffs. They were pulled taut, locking her wrists behind her back, and he pressed her against the car just firmly enough to establish his perceived dominance. "You're under arrest for obstruction," he stated, his tone as casual as if he were discussing the weather, despite the fact that he'd just invented a charge for her simple question. "For asking a question," she stated without flinching. "You'll figure it out in the morning," he mumbled, dragging her toward his patrol car. "People like you always do." He pushed her into the back seat, her head striking the doorframe. She didn't cry out, denying him that small triumph. She sat in the darkness, staring at her faint reflection in the plexiglass divider, her face calm and composed. But inside, something ancient and fierce had awakened. It was a feeling inherited from generations who had known injustice and refused to be broken by it. He had seen a woman to be intimidated in the dark, failing to notice her identification or ask her a single question about her life. He was oblivious to the immense gravity of his error. Commander Alana Brooks wasn't just going to file a complaint. She was going to systematically dismantle the very framework that permitted his kind of abuse. By the time she was through, Jason Trent would wish he had never activated those lights. Under the stark, buzzing fluorescent lights of the holding room, the illusion of justice faded. The air was thick with a palpable stillness, punctuated only by the scritch of pens on paper and the occasional jangle of keys. Commander Alana Brooks sat unmoving on a frigid metal bench. The cuffs were gone, but their crimson marks still encircled her wrists. She held her gaze steady, refusing to let the fatigue creeping at the edges of her vision take hold. The officer at the intake desk, a younger man named Fisher, cast a quick glance at her, then swiftly looked away. It wasn't guilt but unease, a quiet awareness that this situation was deeply wrong. However, he lacked the authority or the nerve to challenge it. He simply followed the established protocol, logging data as if the truth of the situation didn't weigh heavily in the room. Sergeant Jason Trent leaned against the opposing wall, arms folded, his arrogant smirk still firmly in place. His posture exuded the confidence of a man who had skirted consequences before. His badge, gleaming under the bright lights, seemed less like a symbol of duty and more like a shield. To him, this wasn't a mistake. It was just another routine arrest, another name to be forgotten by the break of day. "Want a blanket?" he taunted, stepping closer to the cell's bars. "Or are you too proud to be cold?" Alana met his gaze but remained silent. He clicked his tongue. "Suit yourself." A long silence stretched between them. He tilted his head. "You don't have much to say for someone so full of attitude on the road." Her voice when it came was soft. "Silence doesn't signify surrender. It's a strategy." Trent let out a hollow laugh. "Lady, you're in a holding cell. You think strategy matters now?" She held his gaze, her certainty unnerving him. "Only to those who are playing the long game. And I always am." Something in her tone unsettled him. Not fear, not fury, but an unwavering resolve. It didn't align with the environment. Most people here either pleaded or broke. She did neither. She instead observed every detail. The exits, the security cameras, the subtle exchanges between officers. Her mind, a finely tuned instrument, was calculating, recalling, and preparing. Officer Fisher's voice broke the tension from the desk. "All right, ready to finish the intake." She didn't move. "Commander Alana Brooks, United States Navy." Fisher paused. He looked at the paperwork, then back at her. "Commander." "That's what I said." Trent scoffed. "Don't listen to her, she's just trying to play a part." Fisher hesitated. "Do you have military ID?" Alana gestured toward her handbag, which had been placed in a bin behind the desk. "It's in there." Trent quickly interjected. "There's no need. She already provided a state driver's license." "I suggest you verify," Alana said calmly. Fisher's face was a study in conflicted emotions. His training didn't cover this. Slowly he retrieved the bag, unzipped it, and pulled out a leather folder. Inside, a gold-embossed ID displayed her name, rank, and a Department of Defense emblem. Fisher's eyes widened. This is real." "Let me see that," Trent demanded, his face hardening. Fisher didn't hand over the ID. He simply looked at Alana, then at the identification, and then back to his computer screen, awaiting her next move. "Ma'am," he said, his voice now a different shade. "Would you like to speak with someone from JAG or your base?" Alana didn't respond directly. She rose, not with abruptness, but with a grace that seemed to fill the confined space. "Officer Fisher," she said, "you'll want to document every detail of this incident from the moment I was pulled over. Start with the body cam footage you'll find missing from Sergeant Trent's uniform." Fisher's eyes darted to Trent. "You weren't wearing your cam?" Trent shrugged, but his posture had shifted from arrogant to defensive. The battery was dead. Alana didn't need to speak. Her silence was more damning. "Please contact Naval Legal Service Command," she instructed Fisher. "I'll remain here, but I require confirmation that this entire incident is being logged under independent oversight." Fisher nodded, his movements now infused with urgency. Trent stepped forward, a last attempt to reclaim his authority. "You think some high-ranking title means I can't do my job?" Alana's expression was unchanged. "I believe your job is about responsibility, not power. You challenged me. You escalated." "No," she replied, her voice low. "You escalated because I didn't back down." The sergeant's fists clenched, his face flushing. In another time, in a different place, he might have walked away from this unscathed. But now, the momentum had irrevocably shifted, and even he could feel the ground giving way. A buzz came from the desk. A return call from the Navy's emergency liaison. Fisher took the call, stepping into a corner to speak in hushed tones. Trent turned to leave, but not before casting one final resentful glance at Alana. "This isn't over," he muttered. "No," she said quietly. "It's only just begun." When the door closed behind him, she sat down again, this time with a conscious deliberateness. Her wrists still ached, her back was stiff, but her resolve was as solid as ever. Somewhere, protocols were being activated, names were being passed along chains of command, and in offices far away, the story of a woman unjustly arrested on a dark highway was beginning to evolve into something far larger than a simple traffic stop. Alana Brooks wasn't seeking revenge. She was building a current, and the walls of Trent's arrogance were about to be swept away. The sun was just beginning its ascent over Montgomery, Alabama, its first tentative light catching the damp surfaces of the courthouse from the morning dew. Inside, the building was stirring, one echo at a time. Footfalls on marble, the low murmur of security radios, the sharp click of heels that signaled an arrival with a purpose. For Commander Alana Brooks, seated in a quiet antechamber, the world was already in full motion. She sat alone, a cup of untouched coffee beside her, her eyes tracing lines on legal documents spread across a polished oak table. Her fingers, as she turned each page, were not trembling with anxiety but with control. The same control honed on battlefields where a single moment of hesitation could be fatal. The kind of control earned through years of navigating systems that were often inclined to ignore women like her. The events on that highway had started an unstoppable force, but here in this stillness, the trajectory of justice would be set. Alana understood the power of silence. It had taught her to listen for what wasn't being vocalized. And right now, the unspoken things from Montgomery's leadership were more telling than any formal apology. The city was braced for an impact they hadn't anticipated. They didn't foresee the body camera footage, finally retrieved from secondary dash cameras by Fisher. They didn't anticipate the phone calls from Pentagon officials. They hadn't prepared for the quiet assembly of civil rights lawyers, journalists, and military legal advisors who now had her name at the center of a rapidly escalating media storm. Across the hall, behind closed doors, hushed discussions buzzed like a hive of disturbed bees. Internal affairs, the mayor's office, and even a representative from the Department of Justice had flown in late the night before. Alana remained poised. The storm would break soon enough. A soft knock at the door signaled the arrival of Carla Whitman, her attorney, as composed and sharp as ever. Carla bypassed any pleasantries, taking a seat beside Alana and sliding a file across the table. "Everything we need for the hearing," she said. "But this is already much bigger than that." Alana nodded. "I suspected as much." Carla leaned in. "Trent's report is so full of contradictions it's practically a confession. He didn't log the arrest in real time and he only listed the charge an hour later. The audio from the dashcam, it caught him saying, 'She thinks a rank can scare me.' It's perfectly clear." Alana let out a small breath, not of relief but of solid confirmation. "They'll try to compartmentalize it," Carla continued. "Portray it as one mistake by one officer. But we've already uncovered 5 other incidents involving Trent that were dismissed internally. So this isn't just about me anymore," Alana concluded. Carla offered a look that said, "It never was." Outside the courthouse, news vans were already assembling, their satellite dishes raised to the sky, reporters practicing their opening lines in low voices. Alana's story had resonated deeply not only because of the incident itself but because of who she was. A decorated Navy commander unjustly handcuffed by a man whose badge granted him power but not integrity. It was the kind of injustice people preferred to believe was a thing of the past, and now it had a face and a uniform. "Are you ready to speak?" Carla asked. Alana's fingers tapped once on the table's surface. "Not to the press," she said, "but in court." "I'm ready." A moment of silence passed between them. Outside, the city was coming alive. A distant siren, the hum of traffic, the everyday sounds that told the world life was moving forward. But for Alana, time had condensed into this one crucial moment. She was not intimidated by the courtroom. She had endured far more than raised voices and cold judgment. Her only fear, if she had one, was that this truth might also be brushed aside. That it would be seen but not acted upon. Yet as she rose from her chair, straightened her blazer and picked up her binder, that fear dissolved, replaced by a profound and resolute determination. She was no longer just here for herself. She was here for every name that never made it into a report, for every voice that was never heard, for every person who had silently waited for the system to acknowledge their basic humanity. He would not be silent anymore. The double doors at the end of the corridor opened. A bailiff gestured silently. It was time. Carla stood, smoothing the front of her jacket, and followed Alana into the hallway. The sound of their footsteps echoed off the marble, two women, calm and purposeful, walking not toward a conflict but toward the truth. Just before they entered the courtroom, Carla paused. "Whatever happens in there," she said, "you've already shifted the ground." Alana didn't look back. Her voice was low and clear. "Good. Because it was never meant to be solid in the first place." The courtroom's stillness was different from the silence of the cell where Alana Brooks had spent her night. This silence was dense, charged with anticipation, the kind that settles in one's bones when a reckoning is imminent. The ceiling fans above spun languidly, their low hum a backdrop to the packed wooden benches. Every eye turned as Alana walked in. She was wearing her dress uniform, perfectly pressed, the navy blues a symbol of her pride and service. It wasn't a gesture of defiance. It was an unapologetic statement. She moved with the same poise that had guided her through deployments and command briefings. Her ribbons, her rank, her entire history, it was all woven into that uniform. To some in the room it was just cloth. But to others it was something far more formidable, an unshakable truth they could no longer ignore. Sergeant Trent sat a few tables away, stripped of his uniform and now dressed in discomfort. His suit was a poor fit, his face pale and drawn. He deliberately avoided eye contact with Alana as she passed. His attorney, a man with a practiced smile and a thick file of procedural defenses, whispered into his ear, but Trent seemed not to hear. At the bench, Judge Karen Yates presided. She was known not for sentiment or leniency, but for her unwavering commitment to fairness, and her refusal to let a badge obscure the rule of law. "All rise," the bailiff called, and the courtroom obeyed. Alana did not flinch. The proceedings began with formalities, dates, statements of purpose, and a reading of the case. But the wait in the room only intensified. The moment everyone had been waiting for, the collision of truth and power, arrived swiftly. The prosecutor called the first witness, Officer Miguel Hanley, a rookie who had been at dispatch the night Alana was arrested. His testimony was brief but damning. He confirmed that when Trent radioed for backup, he had been instructed to log the detainment, even though no formal arrest record had yet been filed. Trent had described the driver as uncooperative and agitated, but Hanley, hearing the subtle tone in his voice, had flagged it. "It didn't sound like someone describing a threat," Hanley said. "It sounded like someone annoyed that he was being questioned." The courtroom stirred. Then came the body camera footage. The prosecutor allowed the video to speak for itself. Alana's composed voice, her steady hands on the steering wheel, her simple question, "Why am I being detained?" Then Trent's smirk, the menacing clench of his fingers as he reached for her, the excessive tightness of the cuffs, and his chilling comment that followed, "People like her think they know the rules." The air in the room grew thin. When the video concluded, even Trent's own attorney seemed to deflate. There were no outbursts, no gasps, just a heavy, stunned quiet. The kind of silence that follows the sound of something breaking. Alana was called to the stand next. She approached, took her oath, and her hands did not tremble. Her voice was clear and strong. "I complied with every request. I identified myself. I never raised my voice. I didn't resist because I was fully aware of the cost of resistance," she said. She paused. "But even that did not protect me." The prosecutor asked her to articulate what she felt upon realizing she was being arrested. "Not fear," she said. "Frustration. And a deep, hollow recognition that everything I had earned, everything I had served for, could be erased by one man's prejudice." The defense attempted to challenge her testimony, suggesting she had been confrontational and that the officer felt threatened. But each time, Alana responded with unassailable clarity. "I am trained to assess threats," she stated. And in that moment the only threat was the one holding the badge. It was this final statement that appeared to alter the judge's expression. After a brief recess, Judge Yates returned with her verdict. She didn't prolong the tension. "The arrest was illegal," she announced. "The detainment was unjustified and the conduct was unacceptable." She dismissed all claims against Alana. But she went further. "I am ordering a formal review of Sergeant Trent's conduct by both Internal Affairs and the state's Civil Oversight Board. If officers believe a badge allows them to disregard the Constitution, then we are no longer protecting the public. We are merely policing our own power." Trent showed no visible reaction, but Alana watched as his shoulders slumped ever so slightly. The certainty he had carried on that highway had finally dissolved in the face of true accountability. As she stepped down from the stand, the courtroom collectively exhaled. Carla met her at the defense table, giving a simple nod. There was no smile, just a shared, silent understanding between two women who had just nudged the scale of justice. Outside, the media swarmed. But Alana did not stop for the cameras. She did not pose for sound bites. She simply walked down the courthouse steps with the same confident stride she had used to enter. Head held high, pace steady, shoulders square. Because inside that courtroom a fundamental truth had been laid bare. A badge cannot shield you from the law, and no rank, no weapon, no prejudice can stand indefinitely against a woman who knows exactly who she is. In the weeks following the gavel's decisive fall, a strange tranquility settled over Lieutenant Commander Alana Brooks. It wasn't that the commotion had ceased, but rather that something deeper had taken hold within her. The whirlwind of headlines, commentary, and media speculation had swirled like a storm, but within her, a quiet center held firm. It wasn't peace yet, but it was the calm eye of the hurricane after the winds had changed direction. She was back at her base in Norfolk, Virginia, in uniform, standing at attention during morning formation. Few words were spoken, but none were needed. She felt the difference not in the salutes, which had always been crisp, but in the silence that followed. It wasn't the silence of avoidance. It was one of recognition. A respect that had moved from a matter of routine to a matter of profound understanding. They now knew what she had faced wasn't a simple misunderstanding. It was a calculated assault on her identity, her dignity, and the very idea of truth. And she had endured it without breaking. That afternoon she sat alone, reading the official memo from the Department of Defense. It was brief and formal, a clinical apology, a statement that the incident was inconsistent with the values and standards expected of all law enforcement professionals. But the final paragraph resonated most deeply. Lieutenant Commander Brooks's conduct during and after the incident exemplified the highest virtues of leadership, restraint, and honor. Her actions have prompted a comprehensive review of interagency conduct protocols. She had not sought praise, but this acknowledgement of her principled stand was what truly mattered. She closed the folder and gazed out her window, watching the flag flutter above the base. The bruises were still there, not visible, but the kind that linger beneath the surface. The memory of the steel cuffs, the lingering scent of that holding cell, the echo of footsteps behind her as if someone's control of a corridor could erase their actions. That memory would always be a part of her, but it would never again define or control her. A week later an envelope arrived. This one bore the seal of the mayor's office. A formal invitation to accept a civic honor for her exceptional poise in the face of injustice and her continued dedication to the principles of equality, service, and honor. She looked at the envelope for a long time before setting it aside. That same afternoon she was invited to speak at a law enforcement ethics seminar at Georgetown. She was there not as a victim, not just as a military officer, but as a person who had stood on the front line between bias and justice, choosing the latter when no one else would. The lecture hall was full, packed with officers, recruits, and civilians. Alana stepped up to the podium, her hands empty. "You don't earn respect by wearing a badge," she began, her voice calm but powerful. "You earn it by upholding what that badge is meant to represent. The day you believe it makes you immune to accountability is the day you stop serving the public and start serving your own ego. She paused, allowing the weight of the statement to settle. Some of you might think what happened to me is a rare event, she continued. But ask the people in your own cities. Ask those who don't have military rank or attorneys or headlines on their side. Ask them what it's like to be pulled over for the crime of merely existing. If you listen not with defensiveness but with true humility, you will start to see the cracks. And once you see them, you are responsible for fixing them. There was no applause when she finished, only a thoughtful quiet. For Alana, that was more than enough. Change rarely begins with protests or new laws. Sometimes it starts in moments like this, when those who once wore arrogance as armor are compelled to sit still and simply listen. Months passed. Trent's suspension became a formal dismissal. His badge was returned, but this time without honor. Internal Affairs released a statement acknowledging a pattern of profiling and misconduct. The department promised sweeping reforms. Whether they would last was uncertain, but the door had been opened, and Alana's story was now a mandatory part of training curriculums across the state. Back at home, she was inundated with messages. From women, from service members, from ordinary people who had watched the footage, read the transcripts, and heard her story. One letter in particular stood out, from a black mother in Mississippi whose teenage son had been wrongly stopped and searched the year before. "He watched you speak on TV," she wrote. "That night he asked me what it means to be brave. I told him to watch you again." Alana wept that night. Not loudly, not for long, but enough. Because she hadn't fought this battle for personal recognition. She fought it so that the next time maybe someone else wouldn't have to. She wasn't a symbol. She was a reminder that respect cannot be demanded. It must be earned. And once it is earned, it can be a force strong enough to move mountains. Alana Brooks' story is not just a tale of an unjust arrest. It is not merely about a traffic stop gone wrong or a misuse of authority in the dead of night. It is about what happens when a person refuses to be crushed by injustice. It is a chronicle of the quiet, unwavering power of dignity in the face of arrogance and how truth, when wielded with discipline and purpose, can dismantle even the most entrenched systems of abuse. It began on Magnolia Highway with flashing lights and an officer who mistook her silence for compliance. Alana, a decorated lieutenant commander with a distinguished record of service, was in that moment reduced to a potential threat, judged not by her character but by her appearance. She was pulled from her vehicle, handcuffed without cause, and confined in a holding cell as if she were a common criminal. But even there, on that cold metal bench beneath the flickering lights, she remained steadfast. Not because she was without fear but because she was trained to lead under pressure, not to crumble beneath it. Jason Trent believed his badge made him untouchable. He had done this before, using his authority to intimidate, to control, and to suppress. But this time he chose the wrong person. Alana did not yell or plead. She simply bided her time, waiting for the right moment, for the right stage. And when that opportunity arrived in the courtroom, she unraveled him, not with vengeance but with irrefutable truth. Every lie he told collapsed under the weight of the evidence. Every gesture of superiority was exposed as a desperate attempt to mask his own insecurity and prejudice. In front of the judge, the public, and his own peers, Trent was taught a difficult lesson. A badge means nothing if your actions betray the law it is meant to represent. Alana's victory was not merely a personal one. It was systemic. Her case initiated a full-scale review of police conduct, led to new accountability policies, and sparked a national dialogue about what true justice looks like when the balance of power is reversed. Officers like Trent, who had operated without fear of consequence for years, were finally held to account, not because a more powerful individual challenged them, but because a person with unwavering purpose refused to be silenced. And that is the core of this story. Alana did not win because of her uniform or her rank. She won because she chose clarity over chaos. She stood her ground not for personal accolades, but for every person who lacks the platform or the protection to do the same. Her story became a guide for how to face injustice with both strength and grace. So, what can we take away from Alana Brooks? We learn that silence is not always a sign of surrender. It can be a potent strategy. That true power is not found in how loudly you speak, but in how deeply your words are rooted in truth. That sometimes respect is not freely given but must be earned through the crucible of experience and the courage to stand alone. Most importantly, we learn that accountability must never be an option. Whether you are in a uniform behind a desk or simply walking down the street, your humanity should never be open to debate. And when systems fail to protect that truth, it is up to strong, clear-headed and determined people to remind the world what justice truly looks like. If this story resonated with you, if it made you angry, inspired you, or made you more aware, do not let it end here. Share it. Talk about it. Consider how many Alanas walk among us, unseen, unheard, but ready to rise when the time comes. And if you want more stories like this, stories that reveal, challenge, and empower, please support this channel. Subscribe now because the fight for justice is far from over. And the more of us who stand together, the louder the truth becomes.